Today we're looking at some NHL trade rumors on the Ottawa Senators, the Winnipeg Jets, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Plus we have a slew of updates from NHL players' safety. We have some more updates from the Stanley Cup playoffs. We have some updates on the coaching situations, a hiring in Anaheim, and a whole lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL news and some trade rumors to take a look at here today. First up, let's get started with the news out of Anaheim earlier this afternoon that the Ducks have named an assistant GM. Of course, we have a new GM there, Pat Verbeek, who's been on the job a short time, starting to add more to his staff, and they've added Rob DeMaio as an assistant general manager. He'll also be the GM for the AHL affiliate San Diego Gulls. Of course, Rob DeMaio is an extremely experienced NHL veteran in a variety of facets, including he had a long playing career. I think he played like 17, 18, 19 years. Long career. More of a depth player, but certainly carved a role and stuck around for a long time. Then he get into a lot of different off-ice roles, and he's been employed with the St. Louis Blues for the past 13 seasons, most recently as the director of player personnel, and before that he had a background in pro scouting, including being the director of pro scouting for St. Louis as well. So certainly that's a big jump for him, of course, to be the GM for the Gulls as well. Being an AGM as compared to those other roles are kind of, pretty big stepping stones, if you will. So he should be a really solid asset to Pat Verbeek as they start to navigate through this next stage of the Anaheim Ducks rebuild. Now, as I mentioned, we have a few signings too today. A couple more prospects have signed their entry-level deals. The Washington Capitals have signed Bogdan Triniev, who's a right winger, 20 years old, 6'3" Russian player, drafted in the 2020 NHL draft in the 4th round. Been playing over in Russia. He'll get his new contract, and he is joining the AHL affiliate team for their playoffs. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins also announced that they've signed prospect Ravis Ansons as well, who's a left winger from Latvia. He's 6'1", almost 200 pounds. He was a 2020 draft pick as well in the 5th round. Obviously playing here in Canada, though, in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League for the St. John Sea Dogs, a player who I've seen play live a few times. Having a pretty solid year, actually, in St. John. Like many of the players there, they're on a major winning streak heading into the Quebec League playoffs. They won 15 consecutive regular season games to close out the season, and he was certainly a pretty big role in that. He had 36 points in 37 games, and this playoffs coming up for a lot of these prospects in the across the Canadian junior leagues, etc., will be a big opportunity for a lot of them to showcase their skills, as many of them look to make the jump to the next level of pro hockey in the next year or two. Now, as I mentioned, we have a slew of updates from NHL player safety, which all result from the first night of the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, we saw a lot of fisticuffs in the Leafs Lightning series. The bulk of these announcements come from that game, with one coming from the Wild Blues game. But let's start with the Toronto Tampa game. So first up, we have Kyle Clifford of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who's likely facing a suspension. I don't think it's going to be overly long, because the play that resulted in Clifford getting kicked out of last night's game happened pretty early in the first period. He didn't even play a full minute of action last night. In the first period, he nailed Ross Colton right between the numbers, driving him face first into the glass. Got a 5-minute major penalty, game misconduct, and now he's facing a hearing for a potential suspension on top of that. But like I said, considering he missed the bulk of the game, I don't think it would be too much. Maybe one playoff game. They usually consider playoff games to be worth, multiple regular season games. So I would think he's probably going to get a game. I don't think it'll be any more than that, but we will see. The other 3 fines all come from the same game here that we're talking about. Pat Maroon and Corey Perry of the Lightning, along with Wayne Simmons of the Leafs, all fined $2,500 for unsportsmanlike conduct. I know the fine amounts are kind of funny when you think about what kind of money they make, but those are the rules within the CBA. Of course, it wasn't a major incident, but it did turn out to be, a lot of fists, where punches were thrown. There was certainly lots of yapping, and obviously it was a situation where Tampa was losing and trying to send a message probably for the next game. Trying to get the Leafs to drop the gloves here and get some fights going, and kind of trying to send a message. But for the most part, the Leafs weren't really getting into it too much, and everybody ends up getting a fine. A lot of them were given penalties along with misconducts to toss them out of the game. I think it was around 9, just under shy. There was like 9 minutes and 50 seconds or something like that left in the third period. So they were pretty much done. They gave him all misconduct so that they would not be able to return, just trying to simmer things down here a little bit. And the other incident, which in my opinion, I think player safety got this one wrong. I think this one should be more than a fine, but Wild captain Jared Spurgeon has been fined $5,000 for cross-checking against Blues forward Pavel Buchnevich. Now, in this situation, Buchnevich is down on the ice on his knees. Spurgeon's behind him, and he comes down with a major cross-check, going for like the ankle area. So to me, like the puck's nowhere near it. Obviously, when you're targeting a part of the body like that, that is intent to injure. It's not like you're shoving in front of the net, or you're trying to clear him out, or you're pushing him when you're battling along the boards. Nothing like that. He targeted the ankle, and thankfully for Buchnevich's sake, he was not injured to the point that he couldn't play. I believe I've heard that there's some bad bruising, but I don't believe it's going to keep him out, and he didn't really miss any time last night. It was probably a little bit more sore and bruised once the game was over and, once it had time to settle. But still, to me, it was clear intent to injure. And I understand when the injury didn't take place, that it might be a little more challenging for them within the rules and guidelines that they've set up in place to actually suspend him. But where the intent was there, to me, he should be sitting out a game. But that's my opinion. I'm sure there's probably Wild fans that disagree with me. Blues fans probably agree with me. That seems to be how things go typically. But I'd love to know what everybody thinks down below. Is the $5,000 fine enough, or should Spurgeon be sitting out a game? I mean, this is a guy, this is not typical fashion for him at all. He quite often gets votes for the Lady Byng Trophy. Very completely out of character. I understand it's playoffs and you get kind of ramped up sometimes and your emotions get the best of you, but that, I don't know, just didn't make any sense. The Blues were winning, and I think he just got carried away. He even said today that he was a little embarrassed for his actions, so certainly not something you normally would expect out of the Wild captain. Now, we got 4 more games going tonight, of course. All the rest of the series will get Game 1 underway. So, of course, you have the Penguins-Rangers will be first on the agenda tonight, leading things off from the from the Eastern Conference, sorry. You also get the Florida Panthers doing battle with the Washington Capitals. That game starts a half an hour after. Then in the West, of course, you have Colorado doing battle with the Nashville Predators. And you also have the Calgary Flames doing battle as well tonight with the Dallas Stars. So certainly, lots of action last night. The Lightning, had lost to the Leafs 5-0. An embarrassing loss for the Lightning, in my opinion. The Leafs were good, mainly at the PK. That was the main part of the game to me that the Leafs really excelled at, was the penalty kill. But in all honesty, I don't think they didn't need to be exceptionally good to beat the Lightning last night. The Lightning were hot garbage. I don't know if they were a combination of just the crowd took them out of the game, didn't have the energy. They were not connecting on passes. I've seen numerous giveaways. Power play, they couldn't even barely get set up and get a shot. It was just really not typical Lightning hockey. So we'll see if they wake up, or if the Leafs will have this series a lot easier than a lot of people thought. I mean, even people that were thinking the Leafs would win, I don't think thought they would beat them that easily. At least I wouldn't think. Of course, the Oilers lose to the Kings in Game 1 by a score of 4-3. Mike Smith doing Mike Smith things. He just can't help himself sometimes with playing the puck. I don't understand. He just can't help himself from doing. Like, he threw a big pizza right up the middle, and even though the first shot from that did not directly go in, he did get back and scrambled to make a save, but it led directly to the goal. The game-winning goal at that, with not a lot of time left in the third period. Every time he comes out to play the puck, myself, he makes me nervous, and he's made too many errors. I know some people go on with how good he is with the puck and all that, and you know what? The 70 to 80% of the time that he gets out and makes a good pass, to me, is not worth that 10-20% of the time where he gives a big pizza like that and completely turns the puck over and causes a dangerous chance against. I think they just need to tether him to his post. It'll be interesting to see if the Oilers come back with him or move to Mikko Koskinen in the next game. I don't know what they're going to do. I know the coach for the Oilers did say he did know what he was going to do, but wouldn't say it publicly. So we'll have to wait to find that out probably tomorrow. St. Louis shut out Minnesota 4-0, as I mentioned. Ville Husso with his playoff debut with a shutout, which is a great victory for him. David Perron, Ryan O'Reilly dominated that game. Even the Blues prior to that, with their main guys that were going for them, getting a lot of the points, were guys like Thomas, Tarasenko, Buchnevich, Kyrou. They didn't even do much offensively, but it was the Perron and O'Reilly factor that really led the way I mean, overall, I don't think any of the rest of the Blues, not that they play poorly or anything, it's just it was certainly dominated by those other veterans, which really stepped up. And of course, Carolina had a shaky start against Boston, but Boston couldn't capitalize. Carolina woke up about halfway through the first period and ended up winning 5-1. So the Canes continue to dominate the Bruins, which they've done all season. So we'll see if they move to from Ullmark to Swayman in Boston, or what they might do to make changes to try to readjust here for game number 2. Now, as I mentioned, we have some offseason trade talk involving 3 teams. I want to start with the Philadelphia Flyers, who we saw press conferences today from GM Chuck Fletcher, talking about a variety of things. We get a little bit of information from that on what they might do. I do expect that the Flyers are likely going to be aggressive in free agency, in trades, trying to retool. I know at one point he was quoted a little while back saying that probably around the time they did the coaching change that they were probably going to be doing an aggressive retool. He did kind of clarify things, which to me almost made it more confusing. He was asked to talk about that, and essentially, is this more of a rebuild or a retool? And he said it was kind of like a bit of both. I'm like, well, how can it be both? Like, I'm not sure what they're going to do. It sounds like they're trying to build in some youth while at the same time maybe changing some veteran guys too. Like, it sounds like they're going to focus more on the forwards than anything else, assuming that Ryan Ellis can get healthy and stays. At this point, the whole Ryan Ellis story about wanting out of Philly, or the lack of communication and all that, I don't know if there was more to that and there was a bit of a medical disagreement, so to speak, but that seems to be looked after. I don't really know that there's much of anything to that anymore. But obviously they said they have a plan in place to help him get healthy, and they'll know how he responds and know what his status is likely going to be before we get to the end of June, which is essentially when most of the action really picks up here, when you see more of the trades and the free agency and all that stuff getting ready to kick in. They'll have a better idea where things stand so they can react accordingly. But he did announce that Mike Yeo will not return as head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, of course, who was there on an interim basis after the coaching change earlier this season. Not a huge shocker for me. I know I didn't expect him to be back, but I did think that I know that Chuck Fletcher is a Mike Yeo fan. I just don't think he's the best fit there. He did mention as well that he is interested in keeping Mike Yeo employed within the organization if he's open to it, and they have had some conversation. So it sounds like there is some interest. He'll either return as an assistant coach or maybe work somewhere else, not necessarily on the bench, something like player development or something to that effect. So we will see what happens with Mike Yeo's future. If he wants to find a head coaching job, he'll have to look elsewhere because there obviously are some openings now besides Philly. Which the other thing I found odd is that they're going to start an extensive coaching search. But I'm like, why wouldn't you have already been doing this? I mean, it's been some time since you did the coaching change before Alain Vigneault was let go. You probably have known for some time that Mike Yeo wasn't coming back. I'm surprised that a search hasn't already been underway here, but they're probably, like a lot of teams, going to wait and see who else becomes available so they can get the biggest pool of people they can look at and talk to. But obviously we know there's an opening in Detroit. We know after yesterday there's a Winnipeg Jets opening that we're going to talk about the Jets here a little bit as well, but obviously not in coaching. And in Chicago, we did get comments as well from Kyle Davidson saying they want to start fresh with a clean slate, which is why they let all of their assistants go, and it's not quite clear if Derek King's coming back. That we won't know for some time. He says probably looking like sometime in July before a decision is made. But staying with the Flyers here, a couple of things. A lot of players were discussed. One was Sam Morin. Of course, Samuel Morin's been probably one of the unluckiest guys I've ever seen when it comes to injuries, and unfortunately it looks like his career is going to be over. He's not going to be able to come back from these latest injuries. The knees just has too much damage. So he did mention that they are, again, interested in helping him find something else to do, move on with his next stage of his career, and they may find a way to employ him within the Flyers organization as well. But you have to wonder if they're going to focus on the forward group, assuming Ellis can get healthy enough that he can play. Maybe there won't be a lot of change to the blue line. If they're not going to move on from Ellis, then I would think that there's a good chance they don't move Ivan Provorov either. I mean, I guess we'll see what they get for trade talks and offers and stuff later this offseason. But if that tandem stays together, and obviously they could still keep Sanheim and Ristolainen, there may not be a lot of turnover on the Flyers' defense. If they're going to focus on the forward group, of course, they'll get Sean Couturier back, who's a big part of the offense and down the middle, really great two-way player who they were missing for a large chunk of the season. You have to think that if Johnny Gaudreau hits free agency, I would not be one bit surprised if they are going to throw a lot of money at him. Of course, his friend and former college teammate Kevin Hayes is there as an influence. So, we don't know what Gaudreau's going to do. I know the Flames are basically saying that they're going to move heaven and earth to sign this guy, and until they sign and until they deliver on that, you just can't say it with 100% certainty. But still, the Flyers to me are going to probably do some retooling within the forward group. I think Travis Konechny is a player that we can likely see moved. We'll see about maybe JVR if he can be moved along for that final year of his contract, whether it's a buyout or maybe a trade with some salary retained, something to that effect. I think there are a couple of key players there that very well could find themselves on the move. And then, like I said, maybe bring in one or two other guys through free agency and trade. So to me, that's likely what we're going to see out of Philadelphia. And of course, in Winnipeg, we talked yesterday about Mark Scheifele maybe wanting out, and I've seen an article here today from a Winnipeg newspaper talking about the fact that they said years ago that Patrick Laine, when the word was surfacing about him maybe first being traded, that Scheifele and Wheeler were the locker room issues, not anybody else. And that's more clear, more evident here today, according to this person's opinion and their knowledge of what they know on the situation. So you have to think that Kevin Cheveldayoff has really faced with a real culture issue here. When he was asked about culture, he kind of said it takes time. I'm like, well, you've had this largely the same group for an extended period of time. You've been the GM for like a decade or more now. How long does it take to build the right culture within your organization to be successful and welcoming and to kind of make everybody feel like a team? It's really mind-boggling. And with Mark Scheifele in his comments in the last couple of days talking about how he needs to know what the direction of the team is, and it was all about me, I. There wasn't a lot of team talk there from Scheifele, and it really does sound like he is more concerned about himself, and he does need to be concerned about himself. Don't get me wrong. All players need to be concerned about their career and all that stuff, but at the same time, it really does sound like all the talk before about Scheifele and Wheeler kind of being the, I don't know what you want to call them. I'm not sure if locker room bully is the appropriate terminology, but just the more of the issue. After they lost Dustin Byfuglien especially, this seemed to become more of the problem. I think Byfuglien was kind of like one of those guys that kind of kept everything in check. And after he's been gone, the team just has been the same at all. And I think we're going to see major surgery done to this Jets lineup. With Scheifele, I think the odds of being traded, and I would really point Scheifele to possibly being a guy that the Flyers might target as well, considering where things are at in their organization. He would be effective for a retool, and I'm not sure exactly what Philly would trade to Winnipeg. I'm not sure that there's a deal there per se, but considering where things are at in Philly, they're probably going to be looking for a couple of veteran players that they can acquire to reignite the offense, and he would certainly be effective in that regard. So I'm not saying that he's definitely going to Philly or anything like that, but I can say that with him likely being made available, that he would make sense that the Flyers would likely be interested. So we'll see where things go on that front. And it comes to Ottawa, Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun, talking a lot about the Senators, numerous articles here in the past couple of days as their season's wrapped up. And a couple of things we can expect for them this offseason. And plus Pierre Dorion did a radio interview on TSN 1200, kind of recapping the season, getting things ready here for the offseason. One of the comments that was going around Twitter was quoted by Pierre Dorion on the TSN 1200 Twitter account, which to me was, sometimes you got to remember these places obviously post things to get clicks and headlines, and it was really taken out of context if you didn't hear the whole interview. Essentially, one thing that he was quoted as saying was that they would not spend to the cap unless he knew it was guaranteed that they would sell out all 41 of their home games. But really leading into that, he said that they were going to spend more than they have in recent years, but they likely wouldn't be a cap team unless they can do that, because considering they're a smaller market team, they've already been on a tight budget, they're already, lost a lot of money in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. I would not expect the Senators to be a cap team. And to be honest, I don't think it makes sense for them anyways, even if they can afford it, to be a cap team as early as next season, considering that they have a ways to go before they can be contenders. I mean, there's lots of great pieces there, lots to like about the Senators, lots to be excited about, but they have a ways to go before they can be, a real solid contenders. So to me, it doesn't make sense anyway. You need to give yourself some flexibility. So that was completely, I think, kind of blown out of proportion. He also made comments about top prospect Jake Sanderson, saying that, in his opinion, that he feels that if looking at Sanderson compared to the early days of like Thomas Chabot and Erik Karlsson, two of the last, stud defensemen drafted and developed by the Senators, that Sanderson has a chance to be at least as good, if not better. So that's how high they are on this young defenseman and the upside that he brings. So I would fully suspect him to have a top 4 role within the Sens D-core next season. I would suspect they're likely going to be looking for at least one veteran defenseman, maybe a couple of forwards, depending on what they do. Ideally, a top 6 forward. Nikita Zaitsev is heavily expected to be moved. I'm not sure what it's going to take to do that, but that is a top priority for them. Of course, signing Josh Norris is another big priority as well. Eric Brandstrom sounds like he's going to be back. They were impressed with him, especially in this last home stretch where Shabbat was out for about 15 games with a broken hand. They were really happy with his play and seeing some big development, big steps. So it sounds like he's going to get signed. Matt Murray's probably not tradable, even though they'd like to move on, given the fact that he's recovering from post-concussion syndrome. Limited amount of play and poor results, inconsistencies, probably not happening. But another name to watch, which would be interesting, is Colin White. Some feel he could be a buyout candidate, but others feel like a trade is quite likely to happen. And apparently things were close at the NHL trade deadline. They were having a lot of talks around this player as he was getting ready to return from injury. And one of the teams that was mentioned by Garriock as being interested here in White was the Montreal Canadiens. So clearly there would be a connection. Obviously, growing up in the Boston area, obviously Ken Hughes would be quite familiar with him, likely seen him play a lot when he was younger in college and stuff like that. So I don't know exactly what level of interest there is or if we'll see anything. But obviously White is a victim of being overpaid right now, hasn't lived up to the hype. But he's one of those guys that's like a glue guy in the locker room. His teammates absolutely love him. Very popular within the team, and I think a trade, as much as, from a business perspective, makes sense, from the other side of things, it's like it would be tough. He's kind of like a glue guy that everybody just loves being around. So it would be hard on the group to see him go. But they do need some flexibility in terms of that contract, and they need a top 6 forward, and he doesn't appear to be working out to be that guy. They are likely going to target Claude Giroux if he'll come and play at home, which is their hope. But of course, we don't really know at this point what his plans are going to be next year. He's so focused with the Panthers and trying to win a Stanley Cup that we're probably not going to know the future of that here for a while until the season is over for Florida and see where things go. But expect the Senators to be in on a top 4D and a top 6 forward, trying to make some moves to take some big strides forward. Reportedly, Brady Tkachuk and Thomas Chabot, both, when they met with Pierre Dorian at the end of the season, both expressed that they really want to see moves made to take this team a step forward in the right direction next season. So we will see where this goes. But that is your wrap up for today. Let me know your thoughts, everything discussed down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.